Good to see you.
Well, how are you?
It's actually Bobby, but we call him
I have
Billy.
no hair, so I gotta wear something. Yeah.
Sorry,
Together with
yes, Labor Day. I said, we're missing Bibby.
I was in Aruba.
I heard with your daughter. How was that?
It was great. Aruba's nice. I never did that.
Scary. I hope that you think the condo's okay.
I hope so. I'm sure. Yeah.
Just smooth. Well, you know what? Brittany's due the end of October. So, here, I'll put on this day. Why does it like that? I'd be so upset with you. What do you do?
How about Santa Barbara?
I was just going to say, that was incredible.
I went down to Florida like 5 times in the last 15 months, different parts, thinking about buying a place. No, it was all fun, visiting people, and now I'm like,
Pick one first and then I'll get it. I'll get
We're watching it.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. In case those who may not know me, I'm Charles Patricia. Just a few weeks ago, we recognized a former resident, Butch Bird, in the house that house was packed to show their love and respect for him. Now again, just a week later, we're here today with the same outpouring of both love and support for Dr. and Mrs. Pat Crinigan. This clearly shows how much of a great, caring, and loving community we have. In some way, shape, or form, Dr. and Mrs. Crinigan touched us in some way. If you attended St. Bridget's, no story was ever told that didn't mention Mrs. Crinigan, and it was always in a positive and loving way. I never had Mrs. Crinigan as a teacher, but was fortunate enough to have her as a friend. I know many of you here today knew both Mr. and Mrs. Crinigan, which speaks volumes of their impact on this community. Almost 2 years ago, the Crinigan family offered to donate something in their parents' memory. With the pressures of COVID and the thought of just making ends meet, kind of put the brakes on many projects. That was me. I gotta turn it off.
Now it's your phone, please.
All right, well, I'll have somebody else turn that off. Well, that put the brakes on a lot of our projects. Then the pieces started to come together when Tom Augusta told me that he had a bell that he was after in Virginia. And then it was interesting, and he was interested to know if we wanted to display it down here at this end of town. Well, the light bulb went off, and I just thought of a perfect project for the Crinigans, and immediately they felt the same. I had a design in mind that I actually stole from something that I saw in Potsdam, and the ball started rolling from there. Now it needed to be built. Scott Boysford, Jimmy Del Giaco, Mark Aragona, Bonded Concrete, Bill O'Brien, some of the few that all volunteered their services to put this together as you see it today. Then Matt People volunteered to do the landscaping with most of the plants from his own yard, and then my wife Lynn did the design work of the kiosk. Peg Germano paid for the bell to help to reduce the expenses for the historical side. And finally, a huge thanks to the Crinigan family for their love and support to honor their parents, making this all possible today. All this is detailed on the information board in the kiosk and talks about the history of this actual bell and the history of the Meneely Bell Foundry, which was the foundation of our history during the Industrial Revolution. A thank you is simply not enough for everything everyone has done to make this possible. The combined hundreds of hours are just amazing to think that all this was done to honor these two great individuals. I I can speak for both Councilman Chris Doss, Councilwoman Barb Diamond, that this was an honor and a work of love. They have this structure, a piece of Waterville history, forever in the place here in their memory. Nothing could be more fitting tribute to Dr. and Mrs. Crinigan, and we're honored to be part of this today. I'm going to pass this mic on to Peggy, and she's going to have to say a few words, but I do want to say something. If there are other people who would like to speak at the end about some kind of a special memento, some remembrance of Mrs. or Dr. Crinigan, please come on up. And also, for those that graduated from St. Bridget's under Mrs. Crinigan, we're going to do a group photo at the end. So, I'm going to ask Mrs. Crinigan, Peggy, to come up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of my sister and our families, I'd like to welcome you here today and thank you all for coming out. I was given the honor of relaying the history of the Meneely Bell to you because back in the 1960s, I won the $50 savings bond from the Waterville Knights of Columbus for writing an essay about the city of Waterville. The Meneely Bell Foundry was established in 1826, which was exactly 100 years before our parents were born. This bell, in addition to others like it, are like the one found in the Washington Memorial Chapel and Bell Tower in Valley Forge, were cast in West Troy, which is, as we all know, Waterville. This bell, in particular, was recovered from Virginia and had been believed to have been part of its municipal building. Thanks to the efforts of Tom and Mary Lou Augusta, who drove the bell all the way from Virginia, and the generous donation of Peg Germano, it was returned to its home. Thanks to Scott Rosford, Jim Delgaco, Bill O'Brien, Phil Clementi from Bonded Concrete, Matt Beeble, and Mark Anagata, this beautiful bell is setting here in its lovely Port Schuyler Park. An added touch is that all the Belgian block used for the monument was originally on the streets of Waterville. Again, I appreciate you all for taking the time to join us today, and my daughter Chrissy would like to say a few words.
So I'm Chrissy, the second youngest grandchild. And I just first want to express my sincere gratitude for everyone coming today on behalf of my family. Hearing everyone talk about my grandparents was it's really special. Growing up, it was such a treat to come visit my grandparents here. We always used to say we're coming to the Red House, and we got spoiled with like everything that my parents wouldn't give us when we came. It was lovely. And when you'd walk around town with my grandparents, you couldn't walk 5 feet without someone saying hi or chatting or coming out of their house to say hello. You really just like, you'd go for like a 20-minute errand and it would take an hour and a half because they just talked to everyone, and it was so lovely to see. This is a very special community, and it is because of this community that they were able to live out their whole life here, from people, helping them change a light bulb to the bank tellers being so lovely and patient with them. They had so much care and help and friendship here, and it is because of that that they also did not ever want to leave Waterville. And I just so appreciate that they had that here. Knowing how comfortable my grandparents were here and how much they loved it, one of my special memories that I thought was particularly impressive of my grandmother and very meaningful was when she got on a plane in her 90s and left Waterville, which is unheard of for my grandparents to leave Waterville. And in her 90s, I was living in Honduras, and she wanted to come and visit me, but she did not want to go to the murder capital of the world, which understandable. She also, didn't really want to go somewhere where she couldn't converse with people. So we met in Belize, and she was very anxious about getting on the plane and lost sleep, I think, the nights before, but she did it, and we had one of the most amazing times with my grandmother and my Aunt Mary. which it just, knowing how much she like doesn't like leaving this place, I was just like, wow, she really did that. That's awesome. I looked to my grandparents as an example of what I would hope for my life. How amazing it is to be able to form a community, be part of something as lovely as this community in Waterville, but still be willing to try new things and leave what's comfortable. And I hope to still be able to do that like my grandmother if I'm lucky enough to make it to my 90s. I just want to say thanks again to this community for being so kind to my grandparents over so many decades. It's a very special place. I thought of my grandparents as very kind and gentle people, and that is just the vibe you get in Waterville. So it makes sense that they fit in so well with all the kind and gentle people that are here. And it's very easy to see what they loved about Waterville. And I will pass it to my aunt.
Thank you, love. The entire rest of the grandchildren corps and even the great-grandchildren are stuck on Amtrak somewhere in Hudson. So at least it's going to be taped. They left so early this morning from New York, but good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Pat. As you probably noticed, I'm the younger sister. I'm always accused of being the older, which is why that was...
Mayor questioned whether that was the truth.
I didn't say a word.
What a joy for me to see all these familiar faces. All I could think of coming here is Grammy and Pop would have loved this party. Graham would have probably, though, stopped at Stewart's for a last cup of coffee, but she would have arrived here at least an hour early for the festivities. Peggy thanked all the wonderful people who made the Bell Monument possible, but she saved for me the person who truly put it all together, Mayor Patricia. The mayor has been in contact with me for well over a year, answering every one of my questions and helped us out in every way possible. Mayor, the entire family extends enormous thanks to you. Peggy talked about the very storied history of Waterville in terms of the Bell and manufacturing and the important place the city has in our country's history. I want to touch on the other part of Waterville, its history of the kindness of its people, not only for my mom and dad, but for Peggy and me, and everyone here who has had the privilege to call it home. Your kindness made life here so special for our entire family. And my folks in their later years, so many of you standing here were the reason it was possible for them to live in their home with dignity and grace, and most of all with the happiness and friendship that you extended to them. We are forever grateful. I start with the most incredible neighbors anyone could have had, including the Lamb family, who were back fence neighbors for half a century. And then we had Kathy and Frank McGrowdy, Ann and Gary Gingereski, Sister Carolyn and Sister Mary Catherine, Joan Duffy, Frank and Janet Gilchrist, Amy and Matt Ethier, Ed Kane, and her nearby friends Marie Rudolph and Dennis Lang. And of course, the most famous bridge club, led by her dear friends, Audie O'Hare and Libby Diamond. You did everything for them. Repair everything in the house, Frank. Bring over dinner, make homemade pies, sisters made her sauerkraut she's so loved and I heard about all the time. You took them shopping, to doctors. You stopped by for visits just to chat and check in on them. You got Graham to church, and you even took out the trash. Quite simply, no one anywhere has neighbors like you. And as Mom slowed down, the most extraordinary group of caregivers literally came to Peg and my rescue, and I believe they were heaven sent. Jessica Chaplin, Renee Vincent, Mary Beth Glusko, Carol Darmecco, Jenny Caldwell, and Debbie Edwards. Mom just loved you. Whether you were fixing her hair, doing her nails, or straightening her scarves, you made Mom feel so alive and so valued. And Father Rutherford at Immaculate Heart of Mary, who often, with the wonderful police and fire persons of Watervliet, literally came to Mom's rescue and Dad's at all hours of the day and night. Our family thanks you for the love and the joy and the laughter, and most importantly, the dignity you brought to our parents' lives. I think by the end, Watervliet almost ranked up there with the Bronx. I look out and see so many members of our family. Mom and Dad were only children, and Peg and I just had each other. But thanks to the Gervins, the Schneiders, the Harrigans, and McFarlands, we have one of the most fun, robust, and caring families anyone could have. I think sometimes it is only when you move away that you realize how special a hometown can be. Traveling back to our hometown today was not just a physical journey, but an emotional one. And as Peg and I revisited all our familiar streets, we felt like they truly greeted us with a smile. Peg and I feel extraordinarily lucky to have been raised in a community filled with such love and kindness, as a hometown is where everyone's story begins, and we will never forget ours. Mom and Dad were lifetime Watervliet cheerleaders, and everyone here, you returned their love tenfold. I end today with a quote from Abraham Lincoln, which I think so sums up the ceremony today. Lincoln said, "I like to see a man proud of the place in which he lives, and I like to see a man live so that his place will be proud of him." Thank you for the extraordinary honor to Pat and Dick, Mom and Dad, and Grammy and Pop. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone who would like to come up and say a few words? Sure? Come on. Hi.
Hello, my name is Paul Sadowski. I lived at the other end of the block, on the opposite corner from where Dick and Pat Crinigan lived. And I'm in town because the class of St. Bridget's 1965 had a reunion yesterday. So we got together with our old classmates, all of whom were Mrs. Crinigan's students in 7th grade. It was at times a raucous classroom. You know, you can imagine 7-year-old boys kind of full of hormones getting unruly in a math class. But one thing that I do remember very well and warmly was Mrs. Crinigan, as was her wont, would relieve the tediousness of math with stories of her youth in the Bronx in New York. And she told us about how her husband, then her boyfriend, Dick, who lived in Brooklyn, would take the subway from Brooklyn all the way up to the Bronx to see his girlfriend. And at the time, I had no real appreciation for the dimensions of the city of New York, but having lived there now for decades, I do, and that's about the longest trip you can take in New York City. So, anyway, a fond memory.
Thank you. Anyone? All right, well, that pretty much concludes the ceremony today. I have, my wife had cookies and lemon water over here. Please stick around, have something, talk, and share your stories among yourselves. And then if we can grab everybody over here that had graduated from St. Bridget's, we're going to grab a group photo. Right. So again, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you to the Crinigans for everything you've done. We appreciate it. It's an extreme honor on us to have this today. Thank you very much and be a part of it. Thank you everybody for coming.